Full wrap engraved tumblers seem to be growing in popularity rapidly. But there's a lot of complexity if you're doing something like this design where not only are you dealing with a taper, but you're dealing with a step down, where the cup is really two completely different sizes at the top and at the base. So I've been playing around with this idea and really trying to learn how to make it work. I'm going to share today some of the tips and tricks that I have learned as I'm working on this. Huge disclaimer here, I am not a pro at this yet. I am really still just learning. So I would love to hear from you if you have some ideas of things that I might be able to do differently, or some of the explanations of why things work or don't work. My engineering math side is frustrated that I don't fully understand this yet from a math perspective, but my creative side just wants to keep playing with it. We're gonna go through today what has worked for me so far, and it's really about how you set that tumbler up both in the laser and in your design to be successful. I'll walk you through how to set it up in your laser, and I'll walk you through creating the design in LightBurn, using some elements to create that full wrap design from scratch. I'll show you some of the things that I really like to do in my designs, but I think that you could play around with the tips that I'm gonna give you today and get to your own great result. The first thing that you need to do when you're setting this up is that you're gonna do a lot of testing to understand your rotary. If you haven't yet determined your steps per rotation, you can watch this video here that will tell you how to do that. And there's a few different other ones that I'll recommend in the description as well that might help you with that. You need to know that before you get started. Once you have that dialed in and you know what your steps per rotation should be on a standard cup, then you can start working on the next testing steps for this cup. I have found that in this case, I really like to use the painter's tape method, where I'm going to actually engrave on the cup, on the painter's tape, rather than trying to do something simple like a masking tape, because I really like the visual of this. On something that I have done multiple times, or a simpler engrave that's just one side, I may just use the masking tape, but in this case I really like to run it with the full painter's tape. Let me show you these steps in action, starting with prepping our cup. Since I am really new to this tumbler engraving and don't totally have my settings dialed in, and I'm not 100% positive about this cup, I want to do a few tests. The first test that I'm going to do is one to make sure that my dimensions that I'm designing for are correct. Then I'm also going to test the full design as an engraving before I run it for good. So I want to wrap the entire cup because I want to run the entire design. With painter's tape, I found that I can get a nice white engraving so I can see what is this design actually going to look like on this cup before I go ahead and commit to the design. The painter's tape doesn't need to be perfect. The flatter you can get it to lay, the better in terms of making sure that you can see what the engraving might look like, especially on something like these tapered cups. But I am not too specific about it. I just make sure that every little piece is covered so that I don't accidentally engrave the cup. Now we'll go ahead and measure the cup. I should have done this before I put the painter's tape on, and I actually have measured this cup before, but wanted to make sure that I filmed it. So I am going to measure this in a couple different places just to see if I can get a similar measurement. Here I am at about 310 millimeters. I'm choosing to measure in millimeters for accuracy because a few millimeters can make a big difference when you're engraving a full wrap. So again, I am at about 310 millimeters there. I'm also measuring the bottom just for a reference for myself for the future when I use these cups again, but I didn't use it in this design. So the bottom of this cup is about 250 millimeters. You can see that I'm struggling a little bit to get that measurement exact, which is part of the reason that we're going to test out using an engraving technique later. Once I've measured my cup is to have a test file that will make sure that my measurements and my actual steps per rotation plus the design size will fit. While I measured my cup at 310 millimeters, that doesn't necessarily mean that my measurement is correct. I'm using a flexible tape measure. I wrapped that around the bump on the tape measure, and there could just be some other combinations of the steps per rotation and the actual cup that make that not the right size to design for. So what I want to do to test that is I'm just going to create a long rectangle
It doesn't matter what it looks like at first because I'm going to change the width. I'm just going to make it 2 millimeters wide. I don't need this to be really wide, and I'm going to make it that 310 millimeters long. Now I could simply engrave this whole thing, make this a fill, and engrave this entire line and see if the edges line up correctly. But what I found is that I don't want to watch the laser, and I can't really tell if it overlaps when I do it this way. So what I'm doing now, I will set this line at a specific X position or Y position. So let's place the top at 10 on our Y axis just so we can see it. And we'll place it at an even 300 on our X axis. So now what I want to do is I want to create two shapes that I can see if they're overlapping, and I can measure those overlaps when I do this test. So I'm going to create just a longer rectangle here at the end. And I know that I need that position. So I'm going to check this position on my rectangle here. The bottom is at 320 and 300. So I want to place this rectangle. It's exactly at 320 and 300. So now it's aligned to the bottom. So that should be at the end of my 310 millimeter rectangle. Then I'm going to create an oval. I'm just going to make it first. Then I'm going to pick it up and I am going to place that at the top here. I'm going to, again, check my rectangle's top position by placing that dot in this grid. So it is at 310. We knew that. That's where we set it. So I'm going to also move this to be at 310. Now what this will allow me to do is to then delete this line, or I can place it on another layer. I'm going to actually keep that on my layer 2, and I'm going to change these to another layer. I'm going to set it to this purple layer. I'm going to go ahead and set it to what I use. I use 800 at 15 or 16 power on my Nova 24 to test on the painter's tape, and just a very, very low lines per inch. I don't really need this to look great. I just need to see if it overlaps. So then I can just not output this first line, and I can only output this purple line, and I can test this and I can see how these overlap.
Now, how do you set up a cup that looks like this so that you can get focus both on this end and on this end? That's really the big trick here. And what I'm really looking for is to try to get the focus depth very similar on the back end of the cup and the front end of the cup, which is challenging. And it means that your cup will not be level, which is different than when you're doing just a straight or a slightly tapered design. When I set the cup up, I like to start by leveling the large part in the laser like this. Once I've leveled that part in the laser, then I will take the back end and I will tilt it up slightly. Really my goal there is to make sure that I am keeping focus at that first end, that I'm not crashing my laser into this bump, and to try to get the focus as close to the same on this end as well. With these settings, I've been able to use my standard engraving settings on these tumblers with success. What I have found is that the design does get slightly altered on the bottom portion. So if I design for the top portion, the design on the bottom portion gets a little bit skinnier. Millimeters, it could be noticeable and distort your design. Now that we know how we're going to set our level and our focus for this cup, let's go run that test that we set up in LightBurn. So we can see if with those settings and with our design and with our measurements, if we are ready to go or if we have more work to do. We are back to our laser. So you can see that I have driven the laser head about to the center of the top part of the cup. I want to go now set that as my origin. Make sure that you set that origin every time when you're doing something like this. I will choose my file, which is my test file. You'll see my little oval and my rectangle, and then I will set that to run. You'll see the engraving starts right from that first rectangle because we set that origin point at that bottom left corner. So it starts right there, does a full rotation, and then starts to engrave that oval. As you can see, we're running into a problem. They are overlapping. So that 310 millimeter measurement was off. So now I want to measure the distance of that overlap so that I have something to work with in the next setup for this test. So we know that my rectangle was 15 millimeters, and I can see about how much overlapped. I can measure the distance up to that rectangle for the oval, and I can see that it's about 7 millimeters. And it's supposed to be 15. So it looks like I overlapped by about 7 to 7.5 millimeters.
So now we've tested this and I know that they didn't overlap properly. So I want to go back and I want to change the length of this line. This just helps me to visually understand what I'm doing and to make sure that I put things in the right place. You don't need to do this. You could just do the math of the distance. But I know now that I'm going to measure this at, my overlap was about 7 millimeters. So I'm going to make this a 303 millimeter rectangle. And it moved it up. So I'm going to check this bottom position. It's now at 313. So I'm going to also move my rectangle up to 313. Again, I could have just done this math, but it's easier for me to have it visually. I am a very visual person. And so having this set up this way will help. So now I can send this to the laser and do that same test. And what I'm really looking for is that this edge here just bumps up and kisses this edge right here. I am not doing a very specific design where I need it to line up perfectly. If you were, you may want that to be even a more specific shape so you can make sure that those lined up, maybe a letter or something to make it really, really clear. But right now I'm just looking for them to just bump up against each other.
So same steps as before. To set this up, just rotate it a little bit so you can see the difference. And we got that rectangle going, the full rotation, and now it is going to engrave that oval, and we will see if they run into each other. Looking good. So I've taken it out of the laser, and you can see that those two are just bumped up against each other. And you can see that that looks pretty good for my purposes.
That tested great. We know what we're looking for now. So now we can work on the actual design of the cup. I know that I'm now going to work with a 303 millimeter box. I'm going to create that box. I'm going to create it on my red layer. That is my cut layer. That's an old habit from my Glowforge. And I'm going to create that rectangle as a line. And I'm going to make it 303 millimeters wide. And I know that the length of my cup that I want to engrave is 190 millimeters. And I like to make my design go a little bit past the end of my cup because I like my engraving to go all the way into the top. And I like it to go all the way down past the end of the cup. So I want that to go a little bit outside of this box. Now I have some elements that I am using from Illustrator that I designed. So I'm just going to grab them from Illustrator with a Command C and a Command V into LightBurn. I'm going to select all of these elements. I'm actually going to make them quite a bit bigger. And then before I start using them, I want to make sure that they are prepped. Some of these elements within my design are 2 pieces and I want them to be 1 piece. So I'm just going to quickly use my selection tool and slice them just to make sure that they are all 1 piece. So I'm going to drag up from the bottom right and get a green box, or drag down from the top left and get a red box. Red box means everything that's completely enclosed. Green box means anything that is touching. So right there, I'm just grabbing both of those. So I'm going to quickly check all of these and make sure that I've got them before I start duplicating them. I'm going to make sure some of these things that look like they might not be grouped together but need to travel together are grouped. Now I could do this design in Illustrator as well, but I wanted to show you how to do it in LightBurn today. Anytime that I want to group, I'm just doing a Command G to group the element. And I'll just do a quick pull to make sure that the whole thing is grouped and it's not 2 pieces, because that will cause me some frustration when I try to do other steps within this process. Okay, so that one I didn't grab yet. Okay, everybody appears to be grouped. I want to use all of these elements within my design, and I'm gonna go ahead and make this a little bit bigger and just start with placing that within my box. I will move all of that together. When I'm doing one of these leopard designs, I like them a little bit loose because I like to have a lot of the color from the cup. I don't tend to want these to be very small elements. You could make these much smaller. You could play with this however you want. But right now I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate these guys and place this whole piece over here to start moving around some of the elements. So now I know that they're all the same size and I can just move them around. And really this is just visual. This is not a seamless pattern. This is really just eyeballing what do I think looks good. elements now that I'm going to go ahead and delete. Actually, I'm going to move these out of my way while I add the Disneyed phrase that I'm putting on this cup. I know that I want this to be about 3 inches wide. I have measured the cup a couple of times and I've tried a few different things and I found that is a good size for a logo. It could be slightly bigger, but I want it to be about 3 inches. What you can do here is if you have measured in inches and you're using millimeters, you can actually type into the box 3IN and it will convert it to millimeters. Make sure you have your lock placed on first, then you can type in 3 inches and it will convert it to the millimeter equivalent. Then I'm going to place this within my box. I'm going to select my box and my word, and I'm going to center align those. And then I want to move that. So my box right now, the top of my box is at 80.1. I'm going to move it to 80 just to make my life easy. And then I know that I want this to be about 1.5 inches down from the top of my cup. So right now I'm just going to eyeball that. So that's at 110 millimeters. 1 inch is about 25 millimeters. So the difference between my 80 and my 110, maybe I'll put it down just a slight bit more. Okay. And then I will move the elements around that so that you can actually see. It doesn't really actually matter in this case if the Disneyed is centered on this box because I'm not placing this on something with a logo on the cup or with a lid where it matters where the middle is. So it doesn't actually matter that much if that's centered. It's a habit I like to be in so that I do it all the time. Okay, we don't need any more of these elements, so I'm going to delete all of these. And then I'm going to place the Disneyed on a different layer. Normally I wouldn't do this for a full wrap engrave, but just for this test, for the first time around, I want it on a different layer so that I can see if I like the placement before I have the full cup engraved. Because I'm still learning this and I'm still new at this, I am running the full job on a blue painter's tape version of the cup first to see if I like the result, to make sure that I like how it turns out before I run it. But in this case, I want to actually just run that word first to make sure I like that placement before I waste the time of running half of the cup before I do that. So I'm going to place on a separate layer. This black layer, I'm actually going to make the same settings. The next thing that I need to do is you can see I have all of these elements that are hanging out on the edges. And we know that the edges are going to match up. I want to make sure that I don't have a gap at this line, but I also want to make sure nothing bumps into each other. So clearly right now I'm going to have that problem where something's going to bump into itself or into another element. So I'm going to copy everything here and I am going to paste it and place the lines right on top of each other and see what my overlap looks like. Okay, that looks crazy. So we're just gonna go ahead and remove some elements before I even start trying to do this. So I know I have a Mickey right there, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove him. That's a little bit of a double up too, so I can go ahead and remove that one. That will likely bump, and this will likely bump. We'll move this down a little bit. Okay, now let's try that again. So we'll copy that and we will line up the line and see what we have. We are still bumping. This one is looking good. So this Mickey is not bumping into this one. This one looks good. We just have a little collision. We're a little crowded here with a little gap here. So I'm actually going to move this up and over to make that not such a gap. And then we're going to look at which one is here. We know I want to move this up and over. And then this looks like it's colliding with this. Let's try that one more time. Now, if you were using a seamless pattern, you wouldn't have this problem, but I am not using a seamless pattern in this case. It is bumping into these two little guys. So we are going to move this one down and over, and then we have a little gap right here. So I'm actually going to move this down into that gap. Delete all of this. Again, we will try one last time. All right, so now we don't really have any collisions, but I don't love how this one is looking. So I'm going to move that down a little bit. And also move this one down a little. And into that line. And this is a little bit open up here. So I'm moving that up to that corner, and that should really clean that up. All right, so now I have my design pretty much ready to go. What I want to do at this point is I want to cut off all of these pieces at the top. When I go to engrave this, it's going to be rotated this direction. And I want to start my origin right here at this top corner because I'm going to align this. I'm going to align the origin on my laser to the top of the stainless steel line. So I want to make sure that I can align the top of this line. Even though I'm not engraving this line, it will choose the origin point. This green origin point will align with that. I want to make sure that it's not out here with these top lines. So I want to make sure that I cut those off. I want to use the cut shapes function. What this will do is it will allow me to take the tops off of all of these guys so that I don't have to worry about that. All right, now I'm ready to cut shapes. I moved this little Mickey in a little bit because I didn't want to cut the edge off and have a harsh line on that seam. And since I want to cut off the top, I'm going to include him in this cut shapes. So I'm going to select, using the shift key, each of the individual shapes that I want to cut off that top part. Then I'm going to select the rectangle. Now that I selected that rectangle using the shift key, I can use that rectangle to cut. That last one that you clicked is the item that you're going to use to cut the shapes. So you'll see once I do this, it's going to go away and it won't look like anything happened, but it actually cut it and it made it into two groups. So you'll see that it's cutting. Once I choose cut shapes, you'll see this little thing is still highlighted. I can now pull that part away. And so all of those tops are now off. So now you can see the orientation of that dot for my job origin is exactly where I said I wanted it. So I want to be able to line that part up with the top of my stainless steel on my cup. So this should be all set to go and ready to send to the laser for my test. So if you'll remember, I put that Disnerd on a separate layer so that I could run that first and make sure that I like that placement. So that's what we're running first right here, making sure that that is engraving properly and that the positioning is where I like it. And in the next step, I'm really running the design to check for two things. First, I want to check that I'm getting an even, consistent engraving across the whole surface, especially given that this isn't perfectly level. And I also want to check that the seams turn out correct. And here's the results of the painter's tape test. Happy with the placement. Really like the way that this turned out. I can't tell where my seam is. I do see some fading across the middle of the cup in the engraving, so I'll make sure that it's as focused as it can be and that that's more from the tape than anything else. Now it's ready for the full run. And here's our final results. Looks great.
I am really, really loving this process and learning how to do these cups. Once you learn how to do one, you're gonna wanna do them all the time. And you'll be able to do all different designs. Because once you master a step down cup, a straight like this is easy peasy. I've included the settings that I used for the cups that you've seen in this video below in the description, as well as links to both the tapered tumblers, the step down tumblers, and some other of my favorite tumblers that I've been using. If you're looking for a supportive community that can help you answer some of these questions as you're working through them as well, I've left links in the description to Laser Maker School, which is a Facebook group hosted by myself, John Kaipoff, and Jacqueline from the Fable Tree. And we would love to have you in that group. We're talking about growing your laser business and all the things that come with that.